Hello, welcome to the Apple Insider Podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Our sponsors this week are BetterHelp and Oracle. And joining me is Apple Insider's Mike Wortherly. Mike, we've just heard the latest Apple earnings. Yeah, do you wish you had stock in the company now?
I intentionally don't have stock in the company. I feel like it's a conflict of interest. So, do I wish I had stock in the company? Yeah, it's good money. It's a good investment. It's always been a good investment.
I actually learned from Lou Grant in the 70s that it's good to have one stock, one share in something because it gets you financial access and all this sort of stuff. But I've never done it, so I'm glad to hear you haven't either.
Yeah, that hasn't been needed for Apple in 37 years. They're real transparent about that. What we don't get is the stockholders meeting, right? But that's okay.
Right, that's where it falls down. But still, they're doing great, so that's all right then.
Here's the situation, right? Apple could not sell another iPhone ever again. Just be done selling iPhones, and they would still be functional. I haven't run the math in a while, but it's over 5 years with their cash hoard, just paying people just to sit around and not develop iPhones. It is such an obscene amount of money that the company makes, and that's great for Apple, but it matters not one whit to most of us listening to this podcast unless you're a shareholder. It doesn't make the devices faster. It doesn't make them come out any sooner. It doesn't make the software any better. It doesn't reprioritize Apple's efforts into something that you want. So, great. Wall Street has its opinions, and that's fine. They're usually wrong, but that's okay too. This is Wall Street. This is 100% Wall Street. This is their gain, and if you're an Apple user, other than tribalism, there's no reason to care about these at all.
There is a thing I care about, though, which is what you just said, that Wall Street is wrong. I mean, I remember before I ever heard any earnings calls and was ever writing about this stuff, I would hear that thing, and I think, well, it's Wall Street. You might like them, you might not, but they do it a lot. How can they be wrong? And yet it seems to me that consistently I think they short term everything, where Apple long terms everything. Is that where the difference is?
Yeah, I think that's the major breakdown. I don't think Apple cares that. I think Apple cares about their stock price. I don't think they care that much about it. I think that they know that they're safe. I think that there's no scenario in the next decade where Apple is doomed. We're looking at $4 billion in valuation at some point.
But I remember reading an interview with Tim Cook where he said after each of these earning calls, he goes out for a walk across Apple Park, and I can't remember the exact words, but the sense was that it was a big thing and it was done. And I was very surprised because I listened to the earnings calls, and most of it is Tim Cook basically reading the statement they put out half an hour earlier, saying everything's great, regardless of whether it is or not. So he seems to take it to heart. Am I missing out on something, or is he just sensitive?
No, I mean, it is a big thing, right? It's federal reporting. It's required by law. It is big showman time. It is Tim Cook on the stage as much as he is at WWDC or the iPhone event. And he does it 4 times a year, whether he wants to or not, whether he's got a head cold or the sniffles or not. And you've got analysts who are not looking at the company as a holistic whole for the most part. They look at what they want to see from an investment perspective. And that's okay for them, right? That's fine. That's their job. That's what they do. Their business is telling people how to make money. Fine.
I wonder, is there an argument that analysts go on to ask questions in the earnings call so that they can say they've been like, because I have had times listening when the next analyst asks exactly the same question as the one before.
So this year, like every other time, like every single other earnings report that I've ever listened to has had analysts ask the same question 2 or 3 or 4 times, and they get the same answers. And are they just not listening to the first part of the conference call? Did they not look at Apple's briefing information before they attended this conference call? It's not like Tim is going to suddenly say in the event, oh yeah, by the way, tomorrow we're having a Mac event. That's not what this is for, right? There has not been information out of an earnings event that has spilled hardware or Apple's future plans beyond, oh, hey, we're doing a thing that hasn't been public knowledge for a while. It's, again, I sound critical of these, and it's because I am. They're a lot of work and not a lot of gain. They Are good for investors, sure, but for the average Apple user, you're not going to learn anything by listening to this earnings report.
I'm kind of fascinated by as a show. Yes, that thing of 4 analysts in a row asking the same thing, and that has happened, and it always happens at least a couple. Apple every time will then answer the question, and exactly the same way it did before. Sure. That makes me wonder: you said it's a legal requirement? The calls last for an hour. Are they legally required to run for 60 minutes? And so Apple is happy to just pad out as long as they can.
No, Apple says they'll run 60 minutes, but I'm sure that they're happy to pad out when they get another question that's a repeat. I don't think Cook or Maestri care that a question is repeated. They're just going to say the same answer and just look and see what time is Miller time.
Okay. All right. So anyway, we look at it then. Apple's fine, really, and we can look forward to more new devices in the future. Yep. Actually, I should say, which reminds me, AppleInsider Plus this week is had a phrase. It's kind of about old devices in the past. If you're a subscriber, I'm going to be taking you through Apple's PowerBooks and the surprising impact they had. I mean, I'm surprised. I was there. I owned many a PowerBook, and there were things I'd forgotten, such as which ones caught on fire. To listen to AppleInsider Plus, and you get an ad-free version of the podcast as well, you can subscribe via Patreon or Apple Podcasts, and it would be great to have you. But now, this week, forget the future, forget the past. This week, Apple Intelligence is finally here, in beta, sort of, a bit. Mike, did you install iOS 18.1 and the rest?
Yes, and let me be a cautionary tale for you all. So I have a MacBook Air, which is my secondary testing machine and my portable machine. I've spoken about it before. If you would like, you can go back and read my long-term M3 MacBook Air review that I published about 2 weeks ago. It absolutely destroyed the operating system the first time. It booted, but I could not get it to stay not crashed.
Goodness.
So I had to wipe the machine. I had to reinstall everything, and then it was fine, which is okay. But had I cared about the data on that machine, it was gone. So if you don't need to have these betas now, do not install these betas. I cannot be more clear about that. I cannot express that more firmly than I want to. It's just I have such strong opinions that if you don't need it, don't use it right now. Let other people get the flaming data for you. Let other people crash and dig that hole in the ground.
I know you're right, obviously, and many years ago I bricked an iPad and I got it back, but it was very, very horrible. I think it was my main machine even at the time. It just couldn't have been worse, and I don't know why I was that stupid. But it does seem to me that, just talking to you generally, you always have problems with betas, and I might do or might not. So actually, so far, I've had the odd bug, but nothing remotely serious on the Mac or the iPhone for it. So it seems very odd that you and I, with similar setups, would have massively different situations. But I suppose it just points to how delicate beta software must be.
I also think that you and I test different things for Apple Insider. I do a lot of drive enclosures and things like that. True. And for most of the RAID enclosures, there's specific software for that. So, and regardless, right, it's an operating machine. That MacBook Air is a testing machine. I use it. My main machine is a Mac Studio. That is my testing machine and travel machine because it's important, I think, with the stuff I'm testing, that I run it in a desktop environment and a laptop environment, just given how use pro hardware these days. But it's any beta there's a million different factors that could cause problems. You don't want to be the guy that finds it.
No.
So, but going back to the original point, the Apple Intelligence stuff, the writing tools are nice. Malcolm wrote a piece about how it compares versus Grammarly. The long and the short of it is, it's when it rolls out in full, it is probably enough. You probably don't need that $100 a year Grammarly subscription anymore. But it's still really early. Yeah. Like, the Siri editions haven't been made. There are a couple of nods to it. Like, the interface with the glowy outline is
that's
in,
nice.
And that's fine. Yeah. But that's just graphics. That's not usability or anything. So it's still really early, and we're not expecting the features to start rolling out until 18.1. And
curious about something that I just said about our different experience with the beta. So I was thinking about crashes, but also Malcolm did that whole thing about writing tools versus Grammarly. When I went into writing tools, there are a couple of things I can do, but the proofreading one, the main one, it does absolutely nothing on my machine. It just sits there. I mean, unless I just write perfectly or something, and that's what it is, isn't it? It's telling me.
No, that is not what it is.
Oh.
But I appreciate you saying so. They're like, it's beta, right? It's entirely possible that the model that it needs hasn't fully downloaded, because after you're approved on the Apple Intelligence waiting list, there is a download afterward for all the stuff to be enabled.
Oh.
It's not a tiny one, but you still have to have it. And if you don't have it, even though you're in the beta and have succeeded, congratulations, you're off the wait list. Now you have the features. You still have to get that model. And if you don't have it, you're out of luck.
That explains why I noticed things suddenly appearing after a few hours, and actually one after a day.
Yep.
And things. So actually stuff the thing I really like is Apple Mail, and the way the inbox listing almost always shows a summary now instead of the first few lines. And there's some oddities about it, but generally that is so useful. And actually I think that's illustrative of why Apple Intelligence is good. I don't have to go out to Mail GPT and ask it something. It just takes something good and makes it a bit better. And I think that's great, but I've been a bit about the rest of it.
So I am concerned a great deal about AI summarization tools, right? Do they do a good job in summarizing the article or two, or email or two in a paragraph or two? Yes, they do. But you're losing a lot of the message. You're losing presentation. You're losing the intent of the writing. So great, I guess, if you're in a super hurry that you can't take 13 seconds and read your email. Like, we get thousands of emails at Apple Insider a day. And if you rely on the summaries, these emails from PR people sound like the best thing in the world. But they're not, right? They're PR pitches for things that we would never cover.
Yeah, to be fair, though, when you read the full thing, they still try to make it sound like the greatest thing. I will never... I won't say I'll never use summary. There's a thing in Apple Mail where you go in, you can press a summarize button. I don't care. If I've gone in there, I'm just going to read it. But the inbox thing, quick glance, does this look important? That's useful. Except I am seeing problems. An email of mine was kind of badly summarized. It made it sound like... it's basically that I was initially reluctant to do something, but had agreed. But the truth is, it was my idea, the whole thing. So it was just 100% wrong. And there's a company I don't want to work with, and Apple's rewriting to make it friendly made it sound like I did want to work with them, which is like very friendly. And I can't rely on it. But at times, I think I'm finding the inbox handy at least. So,
well, but here's the thing. That's what I was talking about, tone and message, right? The summarization is adequate. But if you're relying on this to make decisions and respond to people without reading the email, you're making a huge, huge, huge mistake. Please don't do that.
Actually, that's the I was quite taken with summaries. I sound like I'm more positive than you, but actually I agree, except inbox, yes. But also there are times... when I'm searching a lot of sites for a lot of things. And on Safari, the way that it would summarize an article, I think would at least help me have an assessment, is it worth reading this full 10,000 word article or not? But I don't get Safari highlights for some reason. And I know other people do. So perhaps it's just because I'm in the UK and I haven't finished the last button or something. But have you used Safari highlights? Does it work for you?
Yes, but the problem is the problem is not specifically with Apple here. The problem is how everyone is adopting this technology. So you've got this 10,000 word article. You're trying to figure out if it's worth reading or not. So you use the AI tool to summarize for it. So you're on their page for a second or less. You know, this stuff costs money to write. The internet is not free. There are people generating content on the internet like us.
Yes.
That 1 second is not even necessarily ad impressions. There's no time on the page, which Google relies on a great deal to determine if content is worthwhile. So heavy reliance on AI summaries when you're consuming the internet is ultimately injurious to the internet. And if you don't care about that, that's fine. It's a personal choice, right? We all use the tools we use for the reasons we use them, and that's fine. But this is absolutely going to accelerate a decline in unique voices on the web. There is no question about it. Online publishing has gotten perilous. yeah, we're good. Apple Insider's fine. We're not, we're not having a problem. But there are a lot of sites, Apple sites, that provide decent and good content that are not going to survive this, and that's a shame. That's and it's a shame because it's big tech and big business deciding that they're going to make your life simpler and make sure that these sites get nothing for compensation for the 45 seconds that you might have taken to read this article instead of the 1 second that you took to read, which may not be accurate.
Right, but apart from that, okay, that got a bit bleak. Actually, go from bleak to silly. I just said a thing about how I'm in the UK, so it's different. To be clear, you can only get iOS 18.1 if you're in the States or if your iPhone believes you are. So I changed my region to the US, changed my language to English brackets US, and eventually realised I also had to send Siri's language to English US. Fine, did all of that, and at the moment my iPhone is left on this mostly because I can't be bothered to go through undoing it all. But I'm shocked how many differences there are in iPhones between the American states. I mean, one is in the middle of the night I looked at my Apple Watch and it was telling me the time was 4:04, not 04:04. What I'm like, because I use 24-hour clock and apparently Americans don't, and my watch looked like a bit of the screen was broken. And yesterday I'm in a conversation about how hot it is, so I look up the weather app and apparently it was 79 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm in England. I've not one thin clue whether that's hot or cold. So I had to rely on the temperature I felt, which is just terrible. How do you Americans put up with all the wrong systems like that?
Well, I have a master's degree in physical chemistry. I am fluent in both.
Okay. What's 79 then in Celsius? Okay.
About 23, 20.
Oh, right. Actually, that sounds quite low. It seemed hotter. Anyway, another thing about iOS 18.1, the beta, is that it's one of two betas going on. There is still the iOS 18 beta making its way through the developers and the public versions. Is this splitting of a beta thing new, or has Apple done it before?
Nah, they've done this before. Notably, they did this long ago when they introduced eGPU support in 2016 and 2017. They're running simultaneous betas, even like the iOS 18 so forth betas, to test different aspects of it. It's not common, but it's happened before. Even last week before the iOS 17.6 release on Monday, they were doing iOS 17.6 and iOS 18 in parallel, right? So, to some extent, there's always multiple betas going on this time of year.
It seems a complicated way of doing it. I mean, if I'm working on the 18.1 beta and the 18 beta do something, do I take their code? Do I test against it? Do I release it? I just keeping track sounds like a massive job.
I'm sure it is. Here's the thing with Apple, though. They have enough money to do all of them in parallel. That's not a problem.
Right.
And I think for the most part, developers are safe testing one or the other. I think they're safe testing iOS 18.1 or iOS 18.0. There's not going to be gigantic differences in the code base as far as base functionality outside of Apple Intelligence for 18.0 to 18.1, because that kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
The 18.1 is explicitly intended for Apple Intelligence.
You forget sometimes, or at least all I mean is I forget sometimes, that this is the purpose of the beta is to get to developers, is to test things for them to do. And actually we will look forward, won't we, to great new features from good developers very soon. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, I mean, let's... And again, I want to be perfectly clear about this. These betas are for testing, and given that they're released at WWDC, they are explicitly intended for developers to throw their software at it and see. So if you have a particular piece of software that you rely on for any aspect of your productivity, let other people get that data for you.
Do you think it's actually a bad idea that Apple has a public beta release?
No, it's... Yeah, not really. There are still developers that are not big-time developers that still would like or need access to the software to test for this. And with anything, and it's real clear in the terms, this is a test at your own peril kind of thing. Apple can hand you the tool, right? They can hand you the hammer and the wrench, but they frankly don't care if you use it to bludgeon yourself to death with.
Okay. I feel like in the last year or so, I've been seeing more people using the betas than I might have expected. Most recently,
Yeah, it's a bad
Yeah,
idea.
my
Super.
guy in my car garage, as he was billing me a lot of money for an MOT, a test we do here, I noticed he was on the beta of iOS 15, 16, 18, one of those. And the year before, I was a woman at a supermarket guarding the cash out things who had the Snoopy watch face, and we had a great time talking about that. But I didn't dare ask her whether she was a developer on the side because I didn't want to frighten her if she wasn't.
Yeah, it's just there's no support. Apple's not going to support you other than if you brick your device, you can bring it in and they'll see if they can help you.
That's very big of them.
But there's no tech support for this. There's no aid for this. You get what you get. So we already know that if you're an Apple Insider Podcast listener, you are smarter than the average bear, and that's great. And you already know the risks and dangers of these betas. But like Williams clerk person at the store, they probably do not. So reading this, you're probably okay. If your grandma's using it, that's probably not okay.
Right, I think I might be bringing down the average intelligence there because we will get great new features from developers in a few months, right? We have the starts of Apple Intelligence now, but we don't really have much of it yet. Has there been anything that stands out to you as a user as useful in this? So not something that will become useful with developers yet, but something you think right now, actually, I like that. I wish I'd had it before.
I'm going to deflect your question a little bit. And I think what I like about Apple Intelligence and how they're implementing it is the fact that they are considering user privacy and how they do it and what they're like. Apple Intelligence is not going to let you create a deep fake porn. It's not going to. It's not deep with generative AI. So if you need an artist, talk to an artist. That's fine. When you use it to talk to ChatGPT, it anonymizes the search as opposed to if you have a ChatGPT account where they know every single thing that you asked and will happily use that however they see fit. So my killer feature for Apple Intelligence is that. My killer feature is the fact that Apple's like, whoa, let's slow down on this harvesting of data and this absolute lack of privacy on what you're telling it to do. And let's deal with that on a device level. That is my best feature of Apple.
But on the one hand, the business with not generating photorealistic images, that's what they don't do, whatever they are. You're saying that's Apple effectively encourage you to go to an artist, and I agree. But at the same time, you're saying the whole thing of summarizing is, does Apple just not like writers? Is that where this is coming from?
So text generation and writing is low-hanging fruit. Everybody writes emails. Everybody writes school reports. Even if you are not a writer, you are spending some of your day, writer, and I'm putting that in italics here with a capital W, like William and I are writers. We get paid to do this job. This is not a hobby as much as people might like. But everybody writes. It's like cooking. There are chefs and there is the home chef, and there's a huge difference between the two.
Right, and there's also I don't know if this will make any sense to an American, but there are chefs, there are cooks, and there's mine, which is pierce the lid in several places. Yeah, that's yeah. Okay, microwave cooking. That's what you mean. Okay, I'm sorry, but I interrupted you with triviality there. Can you remember your point?
No, it's actually yeah. You're making the point. So if you're a parent, for instance, you have letters to write back and forth to your kid's school or the parent-teacher association, or if you're at work, you've got to tell Jim over in accounting that your expense report isn't back yet. What the hell, man? So there is a lot that people use for writing, and I think that these tools used appropriately and not like a cudgel are a net benefit.
Do you think developers are going to put an add-on to this? Because right now the writing tools, you have the options of friendly, professional, and concise. Are they going to do some? Is there an API and a developer can have threatening or something like that? I'd quite like that. No.
Well, I in my experience, I found that everyone writes a threatening email just fine.
Yeah, right.
But in all seriousness, I do not believe there's presently an API. I may be wrong about this. There does not appear right now to be a way to change what Apple Intelligence is giving you for cues for how to rewrite the. So, like I told Scripps on the news the other day, if your neighbor is just being a total jackass, maybe you want to get it out of your system in your first draft. But maybe then you realize you're going to have to live next to this guy for 30 years, and maybe the email you send him should not be, look, you piece of whatever, you need to fix your thing. Instead, it should be, hey, I was wandering through my yard the other day and I saw that the fence had collapsed at this point.
Yes.
Maybe we can get together and deal with that somehow. That is a better, more politic letter to send to this guy that you're going to have exposure to for the next however many.
That makes sense. So. I'm thinking about your yard now and whether you've revealed neighbourhood disputes there. But a reason for having you on today, well, partly, let's face it, because Wes is on one of these holiday things, but it was an excuse, his absence. Mm-hmm. I wanted you on because there are certain things, so many things that you know that I don't. You said earlier about we test different things. I always see you as the hardware guy, and I know I'm a software guy. But I think I read this week was that Apple has admitted to using Google Tensor hardware to train Apple Intelligence. It was the first time in my life I'd heard of Google Tensor, and I have no thin clue whether or not this is in any way significant. What's a Google Tensor, and should I care?
So Apple never really said before this paper how they were training the core of Apple. So if you're going to skip, if this topic bores you and you're going to skip ahead 2 minutes, the answer is this doesn't really matter, because what Apple does with that model after the fact is what does. The fact that it was used on these dedicated artificial intelligence processing units is interesting in the fact that I do not think that Apple had any interest in sending this information across the cloud to Google, regardless of how big their internet pipe is. I am reasonably certain that even though Google doesn't sell the Tensor cores to anybody, I'm pretty sure they did for Apple in this case, right? People can say that, Apple is fighting with Google and fighting with Facebook for the dominance of the internet. It's business. It's business. Meta fully knows, for instance, that the Apple Vision Pro brings mind share to that product category. Google pays Apple a ton of money to be the default search choice. A ton of money. Billions. So while the trenches may be filled on social media with fans or when they're just coming to blows about this kind of thing, the companies don't care. The companies work fine together.
And
this is another example.
I suppose I'm not surprised. I just, from the headlines, I thought, is this drama? And no. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a therapy service that rather fits our lives of being constantly connected and online, but also so very often isolated. It's an online therapy service, which means wherever you are, you can be connected to a therapist who is right for you. That's not some sort of idle claim either. BetterHelp has over 35,000 therapists with every possible qualification and area of expertise. Plus, before the service tries to match you up with one of those, it asks you, I think, a really rather clever series of questions. I mean, some of them are obvious, like you'd expect, where are you, that kind of thing. But working through them helps you focus on your needs as much as it then helps BetterHelp find the right therapist. It's a thorough process, just the short opening questionnaires, but you also finish it feeling a little less unsure, uncertain, kind of nebulous about your issues. And then you get matched to a therapist. And while you can choose to talk with them chiefly over messages or video calls, it's always all online, which means it suits your schedule. That means you never need to skip a therapy day, with BetterHelp providing help in a way that you can access without taking time out to go to an office, without that adding to the stresses you have. Visit betterhelp.com/AppleInsider today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/AppleInsider. And thanks to BetterHelp for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. But you just mentioned Apple Vision Pro, and I realise that's another reason. I finally, here in the UK, had my first demo of it, and I actually told the guy at Apple, who was excellent, by the way, that I had two friends. One of them was you, who uses it like once a month or something, and otherwise it sits on the desk somewhere. And the other is Wes, who wears it for 8 hours every day. The Apple guy was crestfallen at you and delighted at Wes, and I suppose we're not surprised, but I need to know, have you come round to Wes's point of view?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, there are lifestyle reasons for that, right? I have children.
Oh, true.
And they're both on the autism spectrum at some point. They're higher functioning, but it still means I need to be a little more available as it pertains to caretaking and surveillance of the environment. And the Apple Vision Pro isn't a big old cupped headset, right? But it's still immersive.
Yes.
So it is a little deeper than I care for, and I've spoken about this at some length. The last time I was on this podcast, I think I talked about it too. It's fine. The technology is interesting. I like what Apple's done with it. It's fun to watch movies in it. But if I'm going to watch something, I've got 3 monitors in front of me. One of them is a 32-inch and 2 of them are 27 inches.
Right.
I have more than enough screen real estate to do what I need without popping up a virtual 65-inch Mac screen.
Well, actually, how about this then? You've got all those screens in front of you. You're done. You're set. But in maybe 6 weeks' time or so, will you be buying another screen, like, shall we say, iPhone-sized?
So yes, that was a good segue, by the way. I like that. That's
Thank
very smooth. It very clearly demonstrates that we both have pasts in radio.
Yes.
So yes, I am.
Okay. Do you? I've never actually said anything. Do you upgrade every year?
I do not. I have the incredible privilege of being able to use these devices to help the feds assess what they need and what they have and what should be recommended to people. So for a period of time, right after release, I will get to use a federal provided loan.
Okay. I'm kind of curious about this, but it's federal, so there are limits on what I can ask. I knew you had that concept. I knew your history of it, but I didn't know this aspect of it. How do you test out a phone from scratch? That seems, I mean, for federal purposes, that's... Are you even allowed to explain how you do it?
So you can ask me whatever you'd like, right? There's no prohibitions on what you can ask me. There are prohibitions on what I can answer.
Right.
That's 2 entirely different things.
How much do they pay? No. Okay.
Well, that I'm not sharing.
Yeah.
But so testing a phone, there's a couple different aspects of it. There's aspects of it that are secure that I test inside the facilities, and that's usually the first week. And there are aspects of general use with a mobile device profile that I test after the fact. That I'll test for a couple of weeks after that. So the after the fact testing is just walking around the supermarket with a mobile device profile and make sure I'm suddenly not exposed to the classified environment with the MDM in the middle of the supermarket.
Right. Excellent.
So it's no different than assessing a phone for consumer use, right? You still got to look at the cameras. You still got to look at Wi-Fi speeds. You still got to look at 5G. So the evaluation aspect is not as hard as you might think, considering that year over year there's not an incredible gap in performance or technology.
No. But it's federal, so there must be forms to fill out and things.
So many.
Is there a section with checkboxes with the colour? Because that's got to be important to them.
Oh no, they don't care. They,
Really?
when
What
funnily
is wrong with them?
when I did this with the iPhone 5C, I got that terrible yellow color.
Oh right, I'd forgotten that one. Yes.
So they don't care. They get what they're supplied, which is usually a shade of grey.
There's a room as we record. This has just been a set of rumours of all of the colours for it, basically spoiling perhaps all of the colours for it. And one of them, maybe this is revealing of the one I'm drawn to. The iPhone 16 Pro is said to have a black version, and it already does. The 15 Pro does, but this is like very black.
Well, right. Don't forget there was the piano color in the iPhone 7. So there have been very blacks.
But I remember seeing, wasn't there a difference in the black between, I think it was the 7 and the 7 Plus. They were both black, but one looked better than the other, and I can't remember which way around it was.
Yeah, it's been like 18 lifetime.
Yes. Okay. You don't sound as drawn to black as I am. But...
I don't care either, right? Because and I'm going to be frank about this. Everything, I get a phone, I put a case in it, and I pick the case color based on it being contrast with my sheets, so it's easy to find.
Right. That's so clever.
So,
okay.
Yes. I don't care. I mean, I've had, the rose gold one has not typically been associated as a masculine color. Don't care. It's covered in a case.
It was very nice, though, wasn't it? It was a very nice color. It was a very nice color.
I don't know. It was covered in a case.
Exactly. Ruined. All that work, all that effort. I go caseless, and I spend a lot of time thinking about the color. But actually, this slightly segues into AppleInsider Plus things, because I remember when Apple brought out the titanium iPhone, It was like there was a split. Some people were listening to Apple saying titanium's brilliant, and there's the rest of us with longer memories were thinking that we've been here before. There was a PowerBook that was made out of titanium, and it was a bit rubbish. It all, it was brittle, the paint went off and things. So far, 11 months in, they seem to have got it better with the iPhone.
Yeah. So this is complicated, right?
Hmm.
The Apple did not do a great job on literally the paint on the titanium MacBook, on the titanium, was it PowerBook?
PowerBook, yes.
Still PowerBook? I forget. That was literally 17.
Yeah.
PowerBook G4, yeah. It was the PowerBook. So the material science is more than just the material. It's also coating it. It's also coloring it. It's how you adhere it to something else. Like, we're talking about the titanium iPhone 15, and yeah, it's titanium, but it's over an aluminum shell. So you've got these dissimilar metals in contact with each other. Titanium is not a fun metal to pigment or paint. It never has been. So why they made a G4 PowerBook out of it, I still to this day don't know, because they had to know that was going to be an issue on the coating. They had to know. So this is a hugely long conversation that we have touched on periodically, but honestly, most people don't care, so we haven't delved into it that deep.
No, I worry about spending £1,000 on a phone that's going to scratch like mad and going to pull apart. But, that hasn't happened in a long time. I should get over myself, basically. How about the innards of the... You just said you could have been nicer there. You could have reassured me, but you didn't.
Yep, I could have.
The inside, I think you've written a piece on it saying that there's rumours that it will have Wi-Fi 7 in the 16 Pro light up. And
I am skeptical about Wi-Fi 7. Apple just went, iPhone 15 Pro went Wi-Fi 6E.
Right.
And Wi-Fi 7 routers are stupidly expensive. So if you're looking at a Wi-Fi 7 router for your house, expect to spend $700. Expect it.
But if the iPhone 16 Pro were to have Wi-Fi 7, would it be backwards compatible?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
yeah,
you just wouldn't get the benefit of...
You just wouldn't get the benefits of the 7, and perhaps not for years, right? Because I have a Wi-Fi 6 network, and I do not have a 6E network in this house because there's no point. Looking at Wi-Fi 7, it's significantly faster, or can be significantly faster than most of the broadband in this country.
Okay. I honestly don't know what my network is, but it's fast, so...
So you can say it's future-proofing, sure, but there's not going to be wide adoption of Wi-Fi 7 in the next 4 years.
So given the choice, I should be rooting for Apple to finally bring proper 5G outside the US. That's what I should be doing. Yeah.
Yes. That's complex too, right? That it's in the US and it's easily deployed in the US because of the carriers. There are less restrictions on many of the carriers to adhere to standards. They could pick any one of a series of different 5G standards and just go with that. And the minute you walk over the border and get 15 miles inside the border, well, congratulations, you're on a different 5G standard. Nice job.
This episode is brought to you by Oracle. AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry and literally billions of dollars are being invested, so buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/AppleInsider. That's oracle.com/AppleInsider. Oracle, ORACLE.com/AppleInsider. And thank you to Oracle for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. America's complicated. Oh, but how about this thing?
Oh, of course it is.
This is something that I don't think there's even a pixel of a rumour of it coming to the UK. But this week it was announced that Ohio residents can do the digital wallet thing, the driver's license and stuff for it. I know Apple's been talking about that for a couple of years, but is this the first state that's actually done it?
No, this is I'm not really up on this one because it's one of those, hey, nice feature that doesn't actually do anything.
Right.
Like, you can't give this ID to a cop that pulls you over.
Oh.
You still have to have if you still have to have your paper ID with you.
Yeah.
Then what is the point of having it on your phone?
Right. Okay. That seems okay. It's probably playing a long game here. Eventually, the cops will happily take your phone away from you. That's what they'll do.
Really long game. It is. If there is any kind of serious adoption of this by police force, here's the thing, right? I live in Northern Virginia. I live not that far outside outside DC itself. I am just outside the DC Beltway. So I've got, I live next to a hill, so I don't have 5G, but I have a good infrastructure. I've got good technology. I've got well-funded police departments and so forth. But that is not the case everywhere in this country.
Right.
So you can put your ID on your iPhone, but if you get pulled over somewhere in the middle of nowhere, you are still going to need to have that paper ID, even when police departments can accept it, because they will still have to have done the technology upgrades and, crucially, paid the money to get that hardware.
Oh, okay, right. That seems like case closed there, that last bit. Okay, well, I'm a bit disappointed at the pointlessness of that, but for some reason that makes me leap to this. I'm sure it's the idea of being isolated somewhere out in the middle of the countryside somewhere, but these days now, or very soon, you never have to be alone anymore because you can have a friend with you.
Oh my God, that friend pendant.
Yes. I think it might work. Because it makes me think instantly of Tamagotchi, which I didn't get into, but obviously so many people did. People are going to sit there with their friend pendant and, yeah, okay. And
your technology is going to tell you that you suck at a game.
Yeah, that worried me a little bit. It's supposed to be encouraging and friendly and happy and shares with you. And the example where you're rubbish at this game or that guy's going to leave you. All right, it didn't say that, but it looked like it was going to in the advert for it. So, yeah. But they spent a lot of money on the URL, which I presume, actually I realise I don't know, I presume the URL is friend.com. That sounds worth 1.6 billion, whatever it was.
So let's think about this for a minute. This is a $99 Bluetooth mic with no subscription. Okay. What are they doing with what you tell it?
Oh. You're not doubting them.
Oh, I am completely doubting them. I think this is surveillance capitalism. Look, sometime over the last 15 years, people have forgotten how to people, right? Having friends is important. And if you think that an AI is your friend, great. If that helps you, great. But think about how the company is paying for all the internet-related services that this needs to work with. Where are they getting that money? It's not going to be $99.
Okay. I thought it was silly. Now I think it's scary. Okay.
It's both, right? I mean, it is silly. It's ridiculously silly. But the surveillance capitalism aspect of it really, really bothers me.
There must be legislation. There must be something where they have to report. Oh. What is it? Or am I just being so naive? Okay.
Silly William.
Right.
There's not.
All right, hang on. It works with an iPhone. Doesn't Apple... That presumably means there's an iPhone app. Won't that app have to fess up to Apple about whatever it's doing with privacy?
Sure, but just because you know that it's taking your data doesn't make that any better.
Right.
And so we know about the privacy cards, right? We know what Apple says. But how often do you think your grandma...
Well, more than you'd think. Yeah, no, okay, that's true. All right. So their hope is everybody will hear about it and nobody will look too closely.
It's hard to tell right now, right? Because this is vapor. This is a slickly produced video that doesn't talk about response times or when the device decides to chime in or anything like that, right? So this is marketing copy right now, and that's all it is. But what show me what the sustainable, privacy-maintaining, money-making chain you...
I was surprised how little marketing copy there was about it when I went to look at the website. There's the ad, and there's precious little else with it. So it felt oddly rushed, given that it's well-funded and that video is well-made. I don't know. Okay.
And tell me what the safeguards are that this pendant isn't going to tell you to jump off a bridge because you're really sad.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we should ban all... basically, we should ban everything. I mean, didn't we learn this week that Find My is, in fact, a terrible, terrible thing? I feel I say this to you and I should step back and listen to the rant. No? Or are you calm about this now?
I am calm about this just because of Tim Sweeney's history. He woke up that morning and chose violence for whatever the reason. He decided that his core principles logic was worth repeating, and which is ludicrous because it absolutely was not.
Just to be clear, what he actually said was, let me get the phrasing right. Years and years ago, somebody stole a laptop of his, a Mac laptop, presumably. And here he was playing with Find My all these years later, and Find My told him where his stolen Mac was. This, therefore, is awful. And surveillance. And I'm struggling to understand that. But you feel he should have just think it if he has to, but not bother saying it.
Sure. I mean, everyone has those intrusive thoughts that upon retrospect you go, oh, well, hey, maybe not. Right? I mean, it happens. It's life. We have fleshy brains that do what they want.
Right.
But yeah, how can you get to a point where you say, oh, the guy who stole my laptop deserves his privacy more than I deserve to know where my stolen MacBook is?
You get there by being a mensch, really. That's what it is.
And why was he screwing around on Find My anyway if he's so concerned about the privacy implications?
Why was he screwing around on it now instead of when the laptop was stolen a few years ago? Too many questions here,
it's just,
I think.
The guy, in this case, I swear he woke up and said, gee, you know what, I hate Apple today, and I'm going to go take an enormous steaming dump on X about something.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking enormous steaming dump could be the title of this episode, but let's not go there. This is a family show.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so he did it, and I actually thought, I quite liked the responses he got. They were all basically, so nobody seemed to be being particularly rude or mocking him for it. It was just, this is a strange thing to say because of this reason or that reason. And I thought then he started a response where he's going to say, you're right, actually. I overstepped this. What was I thinking of? And instead, he agreed with everybody, but tripled down on it.
At least tripled.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's dumb. Tim, you're not listening to this podcast, but if for whatever the reason somebody forwards it to you and says that we were talking about you, just delete. It is not too late.
Yeah. It's not that I think Tim Cook listens to us, but I mean, I think I've said this to Wes. Whenever I'm listening to the iTunes Apple Music playlist where it curates my favourite tunes, I'm listening to one. I think I'm not in the mood for it now, but if I skip it, Tim Cook is at Apple Park going, "Oh, he doesn't like this one as much. We won't play it to him again later." That's how I see it all working. Please don't shatter illusions. There, yeah. With one laugh, you shatters illusions. Okay, illusions. How about this then? I think there's a category of ghost apps, because I learnt this week that Twitter for Mac has left the Mac App Store, and hand on heart, I had no idea that there was a Twitter for Mac.
It hasn't been updated in forever.
Right.
In forever.
So, all credit to people for noticing, but it feels like it's a Scooby-Doo thing of, it's not there. Is it a great loss to humankind?
No, it's really not. It's best as a web service or a phone app anyway. The Mac app didn't really. So the Mac app used to be good. And used to have a bunch of features like scheduling and all this other fun stuff that they then promptly put behind a paywall and made it impossible for the app to do.
Right.
So it used to be better than it died, right? But it finally died. Honestly, I'm not even sure Twitter or X pulled this off the App Store. I think that Apple may have automatically pruned it since it hasn't been updated in, I don't know, I think it's been 4 years.
Right, so probably not downloaded in 3, so yes. Okay. It's a shame when an app vanishes, though, even if basically I didn't ever use it, clearly. Still seems wrong.
So no real loss. I mean, it's historically notable. It's interesting to talk about, but as far as a functionality loss, none. There's really no loss here.
Well, how about this? Last thing I want to ask you your opinion about, because I think this could be interesting. Pull my head out of the past and into the future. We've just run an article on Apple Insider about a new patent application, which is, it actually looks like it's a lot to do with the Apple Vision Pro, but the more you get into it, it isn't. It's about the kind of gestures that Apple developed for the Apple Vision Pro, but being applied to anything. And I think in particular, some of the illustrative drawings show basically a Mac with it. Fine. So control your Mac through gestures. Great, clever. Mm-hmm. It suddenly occurred to me as I was looking into this that this could be a way for Apple to never do a touchscreen Mac, because they've always had this thing that you have to reach up and press the Mac. It's ergonomically bad, and PC manufacturers seem to be fine with it, but Apple's no. Here, you can sit back, wave at your cursor, and it will do it. Is this actually the clever future that they are going to come out and do their thing of this is how it should always be done? Other developers, please note.
So famously, there is a peripheral for the Xbox 360 called the Kinect, Kinect, or was. It didn't really work well. It was a sensor that would detect your gestures. They was used for games like Just Dance, where it could see you dancing in your room to the tune. It didn't work well. It didn't work great. It was not a hugely adopted feature. On a desktop versus a living room, I think there are more utilities for it, but I think it will be a user habit kind of thing. I think that going from 2D gestures on a trackpad to 3D gestures in the air in front of your Mac will become more natural as Apple Vision technology advances. This is very clearly Apple hedging their bets and seeing if the user interface paradigms that they develop for Apple Vision will transcribe well over to a desktop computer or a laptop or something. It's logical, right? Doing these gestures and interfacing in 3D is logical.
Plus, I've got to admit, when I used to work on a PC, I would gesture at it quite a lot, but maybe not in the way we're thinking.
Yeah, I think it's a little different.
We already have that thing now of in a video conference. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw anyone intentionally put balloons behind them or stick their thumbs up, but the number of times I've scratched my nose and it's put up a thumb thing for me. So we're on the way. This is the future here today. That seems okay.
Those gestures are easy to spot, right? Those are relatively simple. They're thumbs up and so forth. So those are big sweeping gestures. And the research that you wrote about today is more refined stuff, like the pinch gesture the Apple Vision Pro uses to, say, grab an icon on your desktop and move it over. So it'll be interesting to see if this develops. It's not a tomorrow technology. It is going to take some time, and it's going to take some refinement. Like, Apple's already made refinements to the UI in Apple from 1.0 to 2.0. And there's no reason to expect that that's going to change. I mean, look how much the Mac desktop has changed.
That's true. I've got to say, I'm really impressed with Apple Vision Pro's controls. It seems so natural, move around instantly, like all of it. So
yeah, they're good. They did
a great job there. But
yeah.
Well, okay. So, where can people find you if they need to track you down about anything we've talked about today?
That's ominous, but okay. I am Mike_Worthley at AppleInsider.com. It'll be linked in the podcast post, and that is probably the best way to contact me.
If you want to do the opposite and not hunt me down, but in some way find and celebrate me, I don't know, get all the good stuff to me, I'm at William at AppleInsider.com, and again, links in the podcast. Mike, thank you very much for this. Very good talking to you. Please remember, everybody, there is HomeKit Insider every Monday. And actually, also, don't forget that in just a moment, there's Apple Insider Plus for subscribers. But in the meantime, thank you very much for listening. Thanks as well to our sponsors, BetterHelp and Oracle. And we'll see you next time.
Talk to you next time.